Afternoon. Today we are continuing with those polygons and triangles and sides and angles and all that good stuff. CO68 is I can classify a triangle by its sides and angles. So we have reviewed this. It was in one of our Math 6 reviews on a previous test. So we talked a little bit about it. We reviewed it before our math testing. Now we're going to really get into it to make sure we remember all of it. So it shouldn't be crazy out there. We should already have an idea of this, so it shouldn't be too hard of an objective. So a triangle is a polygon with three sides and angles. Angles always sum or add up to be what? 180 degrees. So that is important to write on there so you do not forget. Triangles always add to be 180 degrees. It will make your life much simpler as we're doing our work today. So there are several different types of triangles. They are classified by their sides. Then there are triangles that are classified by their angles. So it's important to know, is this a side classification? Is it an angle classification? So let me scroll up a little bit. Classifying by its sides. A scalene triangle. Who remembers what a scalene triangle is? Aiden.
It's a triangle with no sides that are equal to each other.
No congruent sides. You are correct. So when we draw a picture of a scalene triangle, the sides all have different measurements. So if it's scalene, sides are all different. It's a side classification. An isosceles triangle. Evan? Two congruent sides. So when we draw an isosceles triangle, there are two different ways we could label this so we know it's isosceles. What's one way we could label it? Evelyn? I could do our two lines showing that they are congruent. What's another way I could label an isosceles triangle so I know that it is isosceles? Evelyn? I could write my measurements. As long as my sides have the exact same measurements, I know, well, this would make sense to have this be 10 at the bottom. We want it to make sense, to be logical. That is a much smaller side, so it should have a much smaller number to it. So two sides are the same measurement, two sides are congruent. You can show it either way. On the test, I'll accept either way. Equilateral triangle. Tatum. All three sides are congruent. How do I label an equilateral triangle? Numbers. I could give each one the exact same numbers. What's another way I could label an equilateral triangle? Audrey. I can give them all three the same hash marks. Either way, it shows that it is equilateral. Through the measurements, through the notches I put on it. Those are my three types of triangles by side measurement. It is important to note the difference between side measurements and angle measurement triangles. So all three of these, notice I didn't put anything in their angles. It's just by the sides. The next one, classifying by angles, all of these, we don't care about their side lengths, we care about their angle measurements. What is an acute triangle? Evelyn? Has 3 acute angles. All 3 angles are less than 90. How can I show that? Is that on the test going to be acceptable? Why not, Evelyn? You have to list your angle measurements, and they all have to equal what? 180 degrees. So you could say this is 80 degrees, maybe this one is 40 degrees, and this one is 60 degrees. They are all acute. They're all less than 90 degrees. And if I add all 3 up, they equal 180 degrees. On the test, you need to label. So you need to show that all 3 angles are acute. They are less than 90. And if we add them all up, they equal 180 degrees. A right triangle. Aiden?
The angles are 90. 2 angles are 90 degrees.
Can I do 2 angles at 90 degrees?
1 angle is 90 degrees.
1 angle is a right angle, which means 1 angle is 90 degrees. At first he was thinking, oh, 2 angles, but if I have 2 angles that are 90 degrees, I can't make a triangle out of it. So it's just 1 90-degree angle, 1 right angle. On the test, you need to be able to show that that one is at 90 degrees and label the other 2 angles. So what will the other 2 angles equal? If one is 90 degrees, what are the other 2 angles going to equal? Aiden?
45.
As long as they equal 90 degrees. So you could do 45 and 45. You could do 60 degrees and 30 degrees. Okay, 70 degrees and 20 degrees. As long as those other 2 angles equal 90. Because 90 plus 90 is 180. So then we have our obtuse triangle. What is an obtuse triangle? Aiden?
The angles are above.
Think about that right angle. Remember, we can only have 1 right angle in a triangle. If we have an obtuse triangle, only 1 angle can be obtuse. So it has 1 obtuse angle. And when we label it, we have to show that it is obtuse. It is bigger than 90 degrees. So maybe I have a 140 degrees, and I could do a 25 degree and a 15 degree. Because if I add all 3 angles up, it will equal 180 degrees. I cannot do 2 obtuse angles in a triangle, just like I couldn't do 2 right angles in the triangle. So it's just 1 is obtuse. The other 2 angles have to be really acute because they have to be small, so it equals 180 degrees. Then we have our equiangular triangle. Evelyn? So it has all 3 angles are congruent. Just like our equilateral triangle, they had congruent sides. Our equiangular triangle has equal angles. So we can show that in 2 different ways. We can do the arcs to show that they are all 3 congruent, or we can give them their angle measurements. What degree does it have to be if it is an equiangular triangle? Evan? Yeah, because they all have to be the same. And 60 plus 60 plus 60 equals our 180 degrees. So all 3 have to be 60 degrees if it's equal angular. So I'm not going to scroll up because I know some of us just joined us from band tryout. So I'm going to leave this up so you can write the definitions and examples of all of our triangles by sides and triangles by angles. Please note they are different names. So classifying a triangle by its side, there are only three that we look at their side lengths: the scalene, the isosceles, and the equilateral. Those all three have sides in their definitions. Then classifying by angles, all four of those have angles in their definitions. So you know those are classifying by the angles. Acute triangle has three acute angles. A right triangle has one right angle. Obtuse triangle has one obtuse triangle. And equal angular has all three angles are congruent. So notice when we have congruent sides, congruent angles, there are two different ways you can show that: using the notches for our sides to show what's congruent, or using side measurements. For our angles, for the equal angular triangle, you can use the congruent arches, or you can write in the measurements. Note that for those of you that just came back from band, when we are labeling our angles, we have to make sure our angles equal 180 degrees. When we're labeling our sides, they don't have to equal anything together. You just have to show if they are congruent or not. So scalene, none of them are the same, so we can't have same measurements. Doesn't matter what they equal. With the angles, it matters. Angles have to equal 180 degrees. On the bottom, it says classify each triangle by its angles and its sides. So we can call it by its two names. If we look at that first one, what do you think we would call that? Looking at angles and looking at sides, Emmeline? And I would actually switch it. It just flows a little bit easier to say acute isosceles. But if you said isosceles acute, you would get credit for that on the test.
I said acute isosceles, I just thought it was missing.
So when we look at this, it says label it by its angles and its sides. I just automatically put the angle name to it first and then the side name to it second. But if you flip it on the test, I'm not marking it wrong. But I always just look at that to make sure I have them both. I have to put its angle name and I have to put its side name. So this first one would be acute isosceles because every angle is under 90 degrees and it has two sides that are congruent. So because every angle is under 90, it's acute. And because two sides are congruent, it's an isosceles. What about our next one? What name would we give to that, Priya?
Right scalene.
Yeah, there's a right angle there, so we know it's right. And none of the side measurements are congruent, so we know it's scalene. And our last one, what would we call that, Evelyn?
Obtuse scalene.
Obtuse scalene. It's obtuse because we have one angle that is greater than 180 degrees. So it's greater than 90 degrees. So it's obtuse. And it's scalene because none of our side measurements are congruent. So calling it by its angle name and by its side name. All right, I'm going to erase now so we can scroll to our second page. Maybe. There we go. On the second page, it says this time, instead of labeling it, you're going to draw it yourself. So make sure that you're looking at what the angle should look like and what the side should look like. And you have to label it. Label accordingly. Then you have to determine if our statements are true or false. If it's false, explain why. Why is it false? And then time for review, you're going to answer those, drawing examples of each of those. So we are going to be working quietly on our own, making sure we understand it. If you have questions, especially if you are one of the band people just coming back, if you have questions, come see me so we can get you caught up. When you are finished, remember, if you have any missing Khan Academy, I know we all had last week's Khan Academy turned in, but there's still some people that have missings from previous assignments. Work on your missing Khan Academy. If you finish it, turn it in, send me an email saying this date is the Khan Academies that I finished. Please look up that date of assignments. Math packets are due tomorrow, so be working on those math packets. If you are done with the math packets and you have no missing Khan Academy, then you have options. You can do other missing work you have. You can do upcoming assignments. You can do Math Masters. And today only, I will let you also read if you just want to read. Okay, if you don't have anything else. All right, usually in math class I say do Math Masters, but we're getting towards the end of the year. Some of us have done all of our Math Masters. If you're able to, you can read, but make sure everything else is taken care of. Definitely if you have practice work. I did not get our retakes corrected on Friday, but if you know you have outstanding retakes to do, get your practice work done and turned in so I can correct it. So for my friends at home, we hope you are well. We hope to see you soon. We hope you have a wonderful day.